Hey guys, just found out it's a Jewish holiday today. Very interesting one called Purim. Now, if you want to know how that's spelled, I have something in my backpack I can show you guys. I'll get it, but it's a very interesting holiday. For those of you who might remember the story of Esther, old biblical times, I'll show that to you in just a sec. Let me just. Happy Purim. I'm gonna say that for a friend. Again, just saying. For a friend. Yeah, tried to win her over, but then I found out she still has a boyfriend, so nope, not happening. I'm not testing my luck that badly. But anyways, I'd like to tell you the story behind the holiday, behind Purim. Very interesting one. So, you may have heard of Esther and Mordecai, biblical figures, right? Well, the history behind that was that the Jews had been dominated by the Babylonians. They got defeated by the Babylonians and were then subject to cruelty under the Babylonian Empire. They were third-class citizens. So, what ended up happening was the king needed a new wife, and his aide, his advisor, named Harin, didn't like the Jews. It's a bit of a complicated situation there, a very unusual one, which turns out to be rather ironic later on. So it turns out that Harin had this pendant around his neck. He always would wear it, and everybody would bow down to him because he was a very brutal, badass kind of guy. Nobody wanted to fuck with him, so everybody would bow down because he was related to the royalty of the Babylonian Empire. So one day he came across Mordecai, and surprisingly, Mordecai did not bow down. He was the leader of the Jewish community in Babylon. And what ended up happening was, when he said, "No, I will not bow down to you," Mordecai was kind of sealing the fate of the Jewish people in a way, very unfortunately. Harin didn't like that, so he threw some coins down on the ground, counted out the value, and said, "Okay, on the 13th of this upcoming month," which was on the lunar calendar, something started with a D, like Dinesh or something, I can't remember, but on the 13th of that month, he said, the Jewish people will be slaughtered. So, Mordecai's walking away, he's all freaked out. And what ends up happening is the king of Babylon at the time got rid of his wife, didn't like her, had her killed, and met a new girl, Esther, Mordecai's niece. But she didn't tell him that she was Jewish, which you may remember from the stories. So, what happened was, Harin was talking to Esther at one point, and she said, if you really don't like this Mordecai guy so much, why don't you just let him be the first to die? You build a gallows, 15 of a certain measurement, I can't remember, it sounds kind of like cubits or something like that, but it's the equivalent of 25 meters. There are some houses that are much taller than that. Shorter than that, my mistake. So, interestingly enough, this becomes relevant later on. Very interesting, very strategic, as you'll see towards the end of the story. But what ends up happening is that Esther fasts for 3 days straight. And, well, she was talking to Mordecai. They were talking about what to do about this terrible situation, getting information. And so she invites Harin and the king to 2 different dinners. She invites them to the first dinner. They have a lovely set of conversations. Everything goes smoothly. And she invites them to a second dinner. And the Babylonian king, he has a bit of a nightmare. He can't really stay asleep. He can't really sleep very well. So he remembers Mordecai actually helped him out at one point. And he did something so nice to the king that the king felt that he had to repay Mordecai. So he called Harin into the room late at night to say, "Hey, what should I do to somebody? What should I do to repay somebody for doing something ever so sweet and wonderful to me?" And Harin thought the king was talking about him. So what he's doing is he's going, "Oh, you should let him wear the royal robes and the crown and be paraded down the street and invite him to a grand feast." "Okay, do that to Mordecai," he said. Oh, jeez, that sure took the piss out of Harin right there. Completely fucked with him. But anyways, well, they do that, and Mordecai is paraded up and down the streets in the royal garbs with the crown and everything crazy like that, and is invited to the second feast that they have. So, yeah, in the process of getting paraded around, people were throwing garbage at him. They didn't like him. They thought he was nasty. They thought he was disgusting. They didn't like the Jews. So, what ended up happening was, at the second dinner, Esther, right, Esther, that was her name. Esther starts talking a little bit more about the situation that's going on, the threat to the Jewish people, and then drops the A-bomb, the mother of all bombs right there, on Harin. She says, with the king in the room, you see this sack of shit over here? He bribed you to sign a death warrant for my people. Guess what? I'm Jewish. The king got so pissed off he stormed out of the room. Harin didn't like that, so he cornered Esther, got right on top of her, and started saying, listen, bitch, if you don't help me fix this shit, you're next. And, well, when the king came back in, Harin was on his wife. I bet you can see how that worked out. So, what ends up happening? The king basically sentences Harin to death. Guess which gallows he hung from? The 25-meter tall gallows that Harin built for Mordecai, yeah. So, all that was left was a bit of cleanup work. All that was left was giving an additional order, an additional mandate that allowed the Jews to arm and defend themselves. And Mordecai got credit for killing Harin, who was seen as a bit of a badass. So nobody wanted to mess with him, and nobody wanted to mess with the Jewish people in case Mordecai sought retribution for them. If there's a class getting out of session, I'll just head this way. Yeah, I'm still at school, by the way. I'm in college now. That's pretty cool. Huh? So, and apparently there's other classes in session here as well. So, what ends up happening is afterwards, in celebration of this, in celebration of evading the death of the Jewish people, there was a new holiday, Purim. Okay. Just gonna keep walking. All right. And it has become a tradition. It really does. It's a landmark moment in the development of Judaism. It's a landmark moment in the progression of Judaism culturally, ethically, morally, that kind of stuff. So it's a gradual shift. And, well, if you take a look at Old Testament times, the Jewish people were considered to be very brutal. They'd go from place to place and fuck everybody up. They got rid of the Canaanites. They did all sorts of shit that pissed a lot of people off. But gradually it's shifted into, I'll just put this in, for why the hell not. It shifted into more of a peaceful religion. It shifted into more of a religion that's respectable and has an emphasis on generosity and cooperation with others. So it may not seem like it. Some people keep talking about this shit. But anyways, the problem is that with Judaism, there's been a regression in Judaism recently to the point where it's not really about generosity, but it's not really about being brutal either. It's just Judaism's kind of there. It's fading away. But part of this has to do partially with the rise of victim status, in my opinion, when it comes to Judaism and all this kind of crap, because people haven't read the Haggadah lately. Who would have thought that? I'm agnostic, okay? I'm not religious. But I read something from, I believe it was a children's version of the Haggadah, talking about the history of Exodus, talking about the history of the Jewish people, and it's explained that pretty much every single time the Jews end up in slavery or in some sort of terrible condition, it's because as a society, they've failed to live up to the moral and ethical standards that have been set for them. So it's become gradually over time in Jewish tradition, in Jewish culture, a thing to respect wealth and cherish it because you might not have it tomorrow. That's kind of the lesson that they've had. It's a gradual shift that's occurred over time for the Jewish people. This is why we've gone from being slaves in Egypt to some of the wealthiest people in the world. This is an incredible thing, isn't it? Well, I wonder why we have a lot of Nobel Peace Prizes. We have overrepresentation of Jews in Nobel Peace Prizes, but we represent less than 0.1% of the global population. I wonder why that is. I think it's a cultural factor. I think it's our emphasis on actually working for something and actually understanding and cherishing the opportunities that we have and not leading them astray. That's a good thing about Judaism that I see. So, while I might not be religiously Jewish, I do support Judaism. I like the idea of it. I like what it does. I like the cultural emphasis. I like the history. I like the whole cooperation thing that's going on, the whole progress, this forward-moving progress. This religion doesn't need multiple versions, multiple... what do the Christians call it? Starts with an S. Damn it. Comment down below if you know what this is. But anyways, with Judaism, there's one version of Judaism, and the main variation is, how Jewish are you? That's it. That's basically the variation between Jews. How religious are you, or how not religious are you? That's the basic thing when it comes to Judaism that I've noticed. So it's a very good holiday. And Purim, there's a tradition that's developed from it, and it's about generosity. And this is where this whole generosity discussion really kicks off. First, you feed your friend, which has to do with that gift that I pulled out of my backpack. It's right here. I'm giving this to a friend. She could really use a pick-me-up, so I figured might as well. The second is to give to the poor. So you donate some money, you help lend some of that wealth to somebody who has been in the situation that your people have been in. If you understand that your people have been in poverty before, it is okay to alleviate that burden to some extent, to be charitable and generous. It takes a village to raise someone, right? But it doesn't take a village to give someone a helping hand. All it takes is a little bit of charity, a little bit of your time, a little bit of your money, a little bit of your food, whatever you can afford. But the last thing is to feed yourself. Again, it has to do with cherishing the opportunity that you have. It's cherishing that we exist and being humbled and in remembrance of that fact. So, I hope you like this discussion. Comment down below if you have anything to say or any input or any idea of what I should do for my next YouTube video. I understand I've been gone for a while. I figured I might as well do this to tide you guys over. Thanks. Have a good one.